Can I get one too? So this morning we heard about Bitur, and here we are, the ashram of Valmiki. We heard about the inspiration that he had received to give this narration of Ramayana. His lineage, and I'd like to make one correction from this morning. Valmiki being the son of who? Varuna, very good. Born from his mother was an anthill. So some mixing of histories was made this morning. Vaishravana became Kuvera, not Vaishravana became Varuna. Correction from this morning. So Valmiki Ramayana, as we heard, has 24,000 verses, and we're going to hear the initial sections of the first Balakanda, the childhood pastimes of Rama and of Sita. But before that comes how Valmiki actually underwent the process of writing. So Narada Muni, as the spiritual master of Valmiki, pays a visit to his disciple. And the opening verse of the whole of Ramayana is a verse that says, the great sage Valmiki, in the presence of his spiritual master Narada Muni, presented questions, as is the standard format for Vedic literature, question-answer format. So the student is putting before the teacher. Valmiki, great sage, is placing before Narada Muni, the sage amongst the great souls, some questions, and the series of questions has to do with who's the all-around perfect hero, because the appearance of Lord Ramachandra is the ideal king. The Supreme Lord showing, just like Chaitanya Mahaprabhu showed the ideal devotee that comes to the stage of perfection through surrender to Krishna. So Ram is the ideal king, meaning there's human-like, apparently, human-like aspects of Lord Ramachandra's conduct and character and speech and everything that made up his personality. So the question that Valmiki is asking is, who is the all-around perfect hero? And he presents this in the form of who has this quality, that quality, the other quality, and so many qualities. We'll just name some of them. It's a long list of ideal, perfect qualities, ending with the statement that where is there such a person today on earth that has all of these qualities in one person. Gunavan, Viryavan, Dharmagya, Kritagya, Satovakyo, Dridhavrata, Charitena Yuktaha, and so forth. Vidvan, Samartha, Atmavan. Each of these qualities, you can imagine that commentators write volumes about each of the qualities. The qualities of a great person, the qualities of the ideal king, the qualities of a hero. Viryavan, Viryavan, one who possesses great strength, a hero in battle. Dharma, Gya, he knows perfectly the science and the mysteries, the intricacies of Dharma, and abides by them. Krita Gya, now the commentators particularly seem to like this one. Krita Gya commonly is translated as gratitude. So, specifically, the way the commentators take this is the gratitude whereby one overlooks bad things that are done to one and sees the good things and feels grateful for the good things. That's pretty exceptional. And they point to how Ram saw Kaikeyi. When we go to Chitrakoot, accompanying Bharata were the three queens and everybody, ministers and Sumantra and Vashishta. So after everything is settled that Ram gives to her son Bharat, the sandals, she comes separately sobbing. The mother, the one that caused all this grief for everybody. Kaikeyi bursts out in tears, lamenting how she has caused so much trouble. And previously, she's reminded again and again by Dasarath and others, so many times you said, although it's natural for a mother to have affection for her son, I feel that I have even more affection for Ram than my own son. That was her heart. But her heart became spoiled by bad association. And she took it in. We'll hear some more when we get there. So she now realizes from the words and actions of Bharata and the conduct of Ram, what a wrong thing she has done. So the commentators speak of this quality, Kritagya, that he sees in Kaikeyi the good. Bad. But he sees in Kaikeyi the good. And speaks some kind words to her. This all has taken place by acts of providence. Otherwise, how is it possible? You're just the instrument of the will of providence. My dear mother, my affection for you is unchanged. she's again feeling the love for him that she felt for him before the whole bad association with mantra. She's been severely sorrowful. And he not only forgives her, he supports her good quality, her love for him, and he accepts it. And he makes no mention of any of the other. Another example the commentators point to, I'm not going to do this with all of the qualities, but they do. When Sugriva has had his wife taken by his brother Bali, and any ability to be anywhere in the region of the kingdom of Bali, he's been in exile. So they make some pact, Ram and Sugriva. Ram slays Vali, and Sugriva just forgets his vow. He gets lost in licentiousness after a long period of deprivation and completely forgets. And there's a whole scene. We're not going to be, because it's not part of this yatra. We did that when we visited South India. But when the time was over for the rainy season and everything was completed and time to go again, and Sugriva is lost in licentiousness, Ram becomes disturbed, transcendentally, and sends Lakshman, and Lakshman is ready to let him have it. Tara kind of mollifies everything, and Sugriva comes and offers his apology, and there's like nothing happened. It's just he's accepting the good quality of Sugriva and understanding how it happened, the way that it happened, and he doesn't hold on to the bad behavior of Sugriva. He's holding on to the friendship of Sugriva. It makes it much easier for Sugriva to do what Sugriva is going to do and does, without any issue between them. He doesn't hold on to the issue that could easily have hurt. Unlike Mantra, who we heard something that happened 20 years prior, when Ram was 5 years old, he did something that Mantra took exception to, and 20 years later she got back. Not seeing the good quality of Ram, but literally just having envy of him because there's competition between Ram and Bharat. And she doesn't forget. She doesn't forget anything that's advantageous to her position. Anyway, so Ram has this wonderful quality. Kritagya. Satya Vakyo. Satya generally means truth, like you speak the truth and you give your word and you keep your word, that kind of thing. But the commentators take it that his words and his actions and even his thoughts were all in perfect harmony. There wasn't any difference between what he would think and what he would say, what he would say and what he would do. Perfect hero. Charitena yuktaha. Charita means his character. So here's what Govindaraj, we remember Govindaraj from the first evening. He makes this commentary. In terms of his conduct, the character of his conduct was, he was within an illustrious, noble lineage, and his actions were completely consistent. He knew what Scripture said, and he lived by what Scripture said. And there are norms of social conduct and standard conduct and even exceptional circumstance conduct, and he was always in keeping with all of them. Charitena, charitrena, nyuktaha. And eka priya darshana. Eka priya darshana. Just by seeing him, one felt something. One felt great pleasure, great happiness just seeing him. And this had to do with his demeanor, how he carried himself and his composure. But in addition, the commentators say his features were like that. And we'll hear something about Lava and Kusha also. They're sons of Ram, and their physical features were aristocratic and noble, and they just to see them one felt something. So like this, there's a long list, and there's a big section discussing these qualities and characteristics. So the question to Narada is, who is there on earth today that has all of these? Who is such a perfect hero? Fantastic question. Narada came with a mission. His mission was met by the question, like harmonic convergence. Brahma had given this 1 billion verse explanation to Narada about Ram. Brahma wanted Valmiki to compose such literature. That's one. Narada had come to encourage him to compose such literature. And here's Valmiki asking the question about who? The perfect person. All around perfect hero. Divine arrangement. Just hearing, very similar to the description when Uddhava hears Krishna's name from Vidura, and Vidura starts asking questions about Krishna. He practically goes into a swoon. He's feeling ecstatic as his mind is now totally focused on Ramachandra. And so, in the next 92 verses comes a mini Ramayana. I mentioned this the other day. From verse 8 through the end of this section, 100. There's verses that have, there are different parts to them, but it's a summation of Ramayana. And then, of course, it's retold by the whole of Ramayana. But the first section is qualities, the characteristics and qualities of Ram. So I'm going to read because it's so nice. It's not everything, but it covers a nice. Just hearing it gives us like, wow, Ram had all these qualities. There now rules the earth a king by the name Rama in the godly line of Ikshvaku. In him you will find your expectations met. He has his self under perfect control. His prowess is unequaled. The splendor of his presence baffles description. He is serene, alike in pleasure and pain. His intellect is strong, keen, and comprehensive. There is very little that he does not know about statecraft. His sweet speech charms the hearts of men. You can never have enough of looking at him. So lovely a sight he is to see. His massive jaws are but an index to the iron will of the man. His broad chest and deep flanks indicate a strength that could lightly take up a bow and string it, which others would never dream of approaching. His joints are strong and supple and embedded with deep in muscle. His hands are long and powerful and reach down below his knees. His head is exquisitely modeled, and his forehead beautifully arched like a crescent. His gait is majestic, like that of a lion. He is neither too short nor too tall. His proportions are perfect, and his limbs are well formed and symmetrical. He has a dark complexion. It requires but a simple effort of his will to destroy his enemies. His eyes are large and lustrous, even as the petals of a lovely lotus. Rich in all the things of the world that make a man happy, he is splendid and marked with all auspicious signs. He knows the ways of righteousness and is always true to his word. The welfare of his subjects is his constant concern. He is renowned, learned, pure, disciplined, and contemplative. He is the protector of all living entities and the guardian of righteousness. Versed in the essence of the Vedas, he is equally expert at the science of arms. He is versed in the essence of every science, learned in traditional lore, and highly intelligent. All the people love him, for he is good, cheerful, and clever. He is the constant resort of good men, for he is noble and equitable in all circumstances, and always a pleasure to behold. The light of his mother Kaushalya, he is gifted with every virtue. No, little subsection here is Govindaraja comments that sometimes Ram is referred to as the son of Dasarath, and sometimes he's referred to as the son of Kaushalya. And it's not just, the woman who is the son of the king of Kaushal, but it's her qualities. And as we know in Bhagavad Gita, there's a list of qualities that are feminine in nature. So when speaking of those qualities that are like the qualities of Kaushalya, he creates an atmosphere of safeness around him. He has capability, merit, and expertise. So in speaking of those qualities, he's referred to as the son of Kaushalya. And when he's speaking of his heroics in the lineage of Ikshvaku, he's the son of Dasarath. He's as deep as the ocean and as unyielding as the Himalayas. So, again, commentary. Mountains sometimes are struck with lightning and strong winds and torrents of rain, and they're unmoved. Mountains aren't moved. So Ram could withstand anything and remain unmoved. Normal persons would be moved. One of the things I long ago heard, when Kaikeyi says, here's the two boons: leave and don't become king. Banished to the forest for 14 years, and my son Bharat will become king. And he looks at her unblinking and says, is that all, mother? Unmoved. I'll leave at once. If this is the desire of my father, I'll leave at once. I'll leave today. He is as mighty and valorous as Vishnu, and attractive as the full moon, so Ramachandra, attractive as the full moon. The commentary says, in this case, valor means he would always be victorious over enemies, yet himself remaining unharmed. That kind of valorous. And he was, while strong, he was as forbearant as the earth. So, commentary is the earth, sometimes people dig the earth or do all kinds of things with the earth. And the earth doesn't protest. The earth continues being the earth. So, when people were treating Ram, saying bad things to Ram or about Ram, he never argued back. But when someone was breaking Dharma, he was very strong. That's the kind of personality Narada is describing. In benevolence, he was identical to Kuvera. And truthfulness, he is like Dharma itself. Always obedient and dutiful to his parents, to his teachers, and to the devatas. In him the worlds live and move and have their being, and it goes on. Narada's having a fantastic time just describing the reasons why he loves and has great devotion for Lord Ramachandra. Then that's just like 7-8 verses. Then he summarizes the pastimes in a whole bunch of other verses, and we'll just do it very quickly. Some of the items mentioned. Ram went to the forest for 2 reasons: to please Kaikeyi and to maintain his father's word of honor. Primarily mentioned again and again, I have to uphold the word of my father. I have to uphold the word of my father. It's my duty as a son to uphold the word of my father. And he placed that above any other consideration. Described as the kind of relationship that Lakshmana had with Ram. That it's the ideal sense of brotherhood, the ideal sense of the master and the servant of the master, because Lakshmana looked upon Ram like that. His elder brother was his master, his lord. And he spoke of him in that way. But also it was the delight of Sumitra, the mother, that Lakshmana served Ram the way that Lakshmana served Ram. It was her happiness because of her love for Ram. Her son had access to serve Ram in a way that she, as the mother of Lakshmana, didn't have access. But her vicariously through her son. She was so pleased. The description of Guha, and one of the places that we're going to visit, his capital in the forest, Shringavera Pura. Shringavera Pura literally means a town where they made artificial looking deer with horns. And they would have them stand in certain places so the other deer would come to hang out with the artificial fake deer, and then they could capture them. Shringavera Pura. And Guha. Guha literally means one who steals others' wealth by robbing them. Now, it means similarly also hidden. But in this case, and his occupation wasn't nice. And how he conducted his occupation wasn't nice. But Ram overlooked that. Because Guha was his devotee, and not only his devotee, he had a relationship of friendship. When they met, Ram embraced him, and he embraced Ram, like Sakya Rasa, although he sees him as Lord. It's unique. It's not like Kunta, it's Ayodhya. Rasa of friendship. So that's summarized by Narada to Valmiki. Another section is where Lakshman and Sita and Ram, when they went to the forest, they saw the forest with equal happiness as the palace of Ayodhya. The opulence of Ayodhya, the splendor and the grandeur and the ceremony and the pomp and the honor, and on the other hand, the simplicity, because for Ram, it's all part of his kingdom. He's the Supreme Lord, and the kingdom of the Supreme Lord isn't only in cities. It isn't only in the country, it's everywhere. So he was equally happy everywhere. And Sita shared, actually, I like the country. You remember when we were living in Ayodhya and I was asking you, can we one day just go and live in the forest? Providential arrangement, here we are in the forest. How happy I am. Just see this and that and this and that. And she loved the forest life. She wasn't unhappy. She was very happy. What to speak of being with Ram. Undisturbed by distractions and other people sending him text messages and emails. I got a problem. Can you give me 5 minutes? I can tell you my problem. That's an inside joke, by the way. No such thing. 5 minutes. So the section ends, the whole first part, with the glories of reading Ramayana, or hearing it, or speaking it. Shravanam Kirtanam Vishnu, or Shravanam Kirtanam Rama. One becomes freed from sin, one's life becomes substantial. A brahmana who reads or hears or speaks becomes eloquent. A king becomes powerful and an effective ruler. A Vaishya becomes good at making money. And even lowly persons achieve greatness. And that ends that section. We're going to just cover 2 more sections. Narada finishes responding to his question. His mission, his purpose in coming has been accomplished. He leaves. Returning, he was on his way to the heavenly planets, so off he goes to the heavenly planets. So now Valmiki is alone in his ashram. It's mentioned in Valmiki Ramayana for one muhurta. He's contemplative, considering what he has heard, the meaning of everything, just lets it go in. Then it's time for his morning duties. So he does something that's out of the ordinary, according to Valmiki Ramayana. Normally he would go to the Sarayu and do his routine at the Sarayu. For this particular morning he went in a different place, to the Tamasa river, with his student and disciple Bharadrash. Muni. And as he's preparing to take his morning bath, he sees two krancha birds. They're cranes, or they look like cranes, and male and female, and they were in their courting and enjoying together. And hearing the sounds and seeing their behavior in a tree, he was charmed. Valmiki. Then suddenly a hunter came that didn't see Valmiki or Bharadraj and fired an arrow and hit the male krancha bird, who then fell to the ground bloodied. And the female bird, seeing her beloved mate dying on the ground, making loud sound, crying and crying and crying. And naturally Valmiki felt pained for the circumstance of the female bird. And then there's two verses, so I'm going to spend a little time on these two verses, where he says, "This is a cruel act and unnatural, even for a hardened hunter. How can one have the heart to strike to death a poor bird, and that during mating?" This anger, wrath arose in his heart. Not only in Vrindavan things like this happen. It happens in Bittur also. So the he's got a mantra. A Hari mantra. The commentators say this verse by Valmiki mirrors a later verse that comes from the wife of Ravana when Ravana is killed. The verse from Valmiki Ramayana is, on seeing her husband Ravana, who was the twice-born son of Vishravas, whose crown was decorated with red crest jewels, who possessed the winged aircraft Pushpaka, who was intoxicated by the boons of Lord Brahma and the beauty of Sita, who was surrounded by Indrajit, Vibhishan, Kumbhakarna and others, was now slain on the ground, limbs covered by blood. Mahodri intensely lamented with piteous utterances due to separation. So the female krancha bird was making such sounds. A little different than the crow upstairs here, but piteous sounds, having lost her mate, mirroring the mood. Then this very famous verse, the one that came out of Valmiki's mouth in perfect meter and rhyme and so forth. "O hunter, because you have killed the male bird and separated it from its companion when they were approaching the peak of their passion, You will be condemned for all ages to come. Let all inauspiciousness befall you. So again, Govindaraja, the commentator, compares this to Mandotri's words, where she's lamenting after her death, which is also found in the Bhagavatam, Canto 9, when Ravana falls. Mandodari says, "O my Lord, O Master, you epitomize trouble for others, and therefore you are called Ravana." In case you wondered what his name means. Trouble for others. But now that you have been defeated, we are also defeated. For without you, the state of Lanka has been conquered by the enemy. To whom will it go for shelter? Oh, greatly fortunate one, you came under the influence of lusty desires, and therefore you could not understand the influence of Mother Sita. Now, because of her curse, you have been reduced to this state, having been killed by Lord Ramachandra. Because of you, the state of Lanka, and also we ourselves have no protector. By your deeds, you have made your body fit to be eaten by vultures, and your soul fit to go to hell. That's his wife. She was tuned into reality. Similar to the words spoken by Valmiki about this horrible act of the hunter killing the male cruncher bird. The verse is taken as the Mangala Charana, just like when we have at the beginning of Bhagavad Gita our Mangala Charana verses. Mangala Charana of the whole Ramayana. So it gets a lot of attention by those who speak and write about Ramayana. Speaking these words, Valmiki went through a whole series of different emotions. First, he was appalled at himself. I have control of my passions and control of my mind. I'm a sadhu, and this anger erupted and I spoke such harsh words. How did this happen? He was bewildered. He felt guilty and confused. And he's a sage. He doesn't do these things, and he doesn't get guilty and confused either. He was feeling feelings that he just didn't know. Then the verse kept repeating and repeating itself in his mind, and as he was repeating it and repeating it in his mind, a smile came on his face. And Bharadraj, his disciple, is watching these different changes going on in his illustrious teacher. He made no judgment because he understood, and this is an important instruction within Ramayana, he understood there's some higher purpose to all of this. I'm not going to be the judge of Valmiki, that's for sure. So Valmiki was turning it around in his mind, and again, what's the meaning? Why did this happen? And at the same time, hearing it again and again, the sound was very sweet and very pleasing, although the message was very harsh and strong. And he was further bewildered by the fact that the message just kept coming and repeating and repeating and repeating and repeating and repeating. And he had lost control of his mind. It just kept repeating and repeating. And he has control of his mind. But he lost control of his mind. Just repeating and repeating and repeating. So in this pondering state, who would visit him but his spiritual master, Lord Brahma came. And he shared everything with Lord Brahma, what happened. And as he's sitting there with Lord Brahma asking, what was all of this? He speaks the verse. And he speaks the verse spontaneously. He wasn't even intending to speak the verse. And Lord Brahma says, don't you know that it was I who requested Saraswati to come and have you speak this particular verse? Because I have this desire. I wanted Narada to come and have you compose such literature. This verse is the prototype, the model, that you should compose a wonderful glorification of Lord Ramachandra. And I give you, so this is the service I'm giving to you. Wasn't said, okay, I got an idea, I think I'll write a book. He was instructed by Narada and instructed by Brahma to write the book, giving him this benediction, that you're going to not only see the pastimes, but you'll feel the feelings of all the personalities, feelings that are public and feelings that are private, feelings that are expressed outside and feelings that are inside. You'll come to know all of that. Experience it directly so that you can speak this Ramayana, because there wasn't books, didn't have a computer or an iPad. He just composed it within his mind. 24,000 verses. Very, very transcendental personality. So he was contemplating. Brahma left. He's contemplating this shoka, or lamentation, has turned into a beautiful sloka. Shoka became sloka. The difficulty became ecstasy. So he did what he was told to do. He sat in meditation and he saw and experienced all of what he was told would happen. And then he writes in Valmiki Ramayana that he wanted to tell this story that's not just a story of Ram, but the story of the fall of Ravana. This where this reference comes. If you remember Paulastya Vadha. And the character of Sita, so the commentators say Ramayana can be the narration about Rama, and it can be the narration of Ramayana. Rama is another name of Sita. The internal potency of the Supreme Lord is Rama. So Ramayana. Ramayana. The glories of Sita, the glories of Ram, the destruction of Ravana, and everything else, all in one literature. So the third is called the Sarga of Balakanda. The third is a summation of the messages that are within that Ramayana, and because of time, I'll mention them. This is now making reference to Govinda Raja, the commentator, itemizing. Of course, at the center is the Supreme Lord Ram, and the means to reach Ram, and the nature of service unto Ram, the Bhagavan aspect of the Supreme Lord, the qualities and the authority of the Supreme Lord in his role as the ideal king, the dependence upon authority that those who are properly situated feel towards qualified spiritual authority, unmotivated devotional service, qualities of a spiritual master, and so on. These are so topics that are covered. A topical narration is covered in this third sarga. Then comes, so now it's it's all in his mind, 24,000 verses of the same meter, the same style. as the original one that Saraswati had him speak, with rhyme and meter and pronunciation and so forth. So now, how to carry this forward? That's the next. And he's contemplating who's qualified, and Love and Kush come, and he says, aha, Love and Kush. So with great delicacy and detail, and giving them insight into the message that he wished to convey, the mood that he wished to convey, the feelings that he wished to, everything he taught them. They were extremely qualified in so many ways. The art of music, various pitch and intonation, pauses in their voices, and their physical appearance. They looked like celestial singers. They're sons of Sita and Ram. Perfectly qualified, perfectly trained, and off they go. From here, from Bittur, to different places, including Ayodhya, where they're reciting in public forum. Now this little history is given about, I find it interesting, when Ramayana was written here in Bittur, Ram was 40 years old. Now he lived a long time, but when he left, when Vishwamitra Muni took him from Ayodhya to help go kill Marich and Subahu and Tataka. We'll hear this afternoon about Marich and Subahu. Dasrata says he was not yet 16, but later on in the Valmiki Ramayana says he was 12. Ram was married when he was 12. I find it really interesting. Sita was 7 years younger than Ram, because Sita tells later about her story that so they got married and they came back to Ayodhya, and Ram was 25, so they were married for a good hearty 12, 13 years. When it was time for him to become king, when it was time to become Prince Regent, that's when Kaikeyi said, get out of town for 14 years. So that 14 years plus 25, when he was in exile to the forest, made it, he was 39, then 40 when Valmiki Ramayana was composed. Which means, so when Sita tells the story, when he was to become crowned Prince Regent, Ram was 25 and I was 18. So that means the age difference was 7. So when he was 12, a little different today, isn't it? And on top of it, well, we'll hear this when we get there in the narration, but before that there was a 1-year battle by one king who wanted to marry Sita, and Janaka was being, harassed. So he called upon the Devas. The Devas produced this unlimited army that defeated the king. And then he had his brother Kushadwaja to become the king of that kingdom. And that was before Sita was 5. And they were all like, I got to marry this 4-year-old girl. You figure it out. Think of some girl that you know that's 4 years old and somebody's going to war to marry the girl. Anyway, that's what Ramayana says. So they go on reciting, And the nature of the beauty of their recitation is so wonderful. And then, as we mentioned, Bharata hears one of those recitations in the city of Ayodhya, and he tells his brother, "This is wonderful." And so Ram says, "Yeah, let's bring them to the royal palace and we'll all sit and hear from them." At this time, he doesn't know that the reciters are his sons. He knows them as sages, students of Valmiki. He certainly knows that Sita went to the ashram of Valmiki, and perhaps that was here in Bittur, perhaps it was Chitrakoot, but whatever it was. And as we described, it's just going to end with this, because he's the king, he's seated on a big throne. But it's all about him and Sita and Ravana and the illustrious line of Ikshvaku, and he wants to sit in the audience with everybody else. But they want him to be in the big seat. So he sits in the big seat, and they get so absorbed in the Ramayana Katha because of the quality of Lava and Kusha reciting and the substance of the subject matter of Valmiki Ramayana. Valmiki comments in Valmiki Ramayana that they became more attracted to Valmiki Ramayana than to Ram. They just got absorbed. And so he quietly, gradually snuck down from the big seat and sat in the midst of everybody. And as they were all enjoying the narration, sometimes someone would pat another person on the shoulder. So Ram patted somebody on the shoulder, and that somebody patted Ram back, and they didn't even notice who it was they were patting. Until the narration was over, and they looked up in the big seat, and he wasn't there, because he was in the audience with them. A glorious literature, Valmiki Ramayana, and the other Ramayanas, but this one is super special. Brahma said, "Everything that you utter will be truth." He gave him so many benedictions. He really wanted Valmiki. So Valmiki was wondering, why me? Of all people, why me? And he looked around the ashram, Valmiki Ashram, and he saw Sita, and then he understood. It's by Sita's mercy. Because Ram sent Sita here. And because Ram sent Sita here, by Sita's mercy, I am now to recite this, compose and recite this glorification of Ram. So it goes in sequence. He got the mercy of Narada. So he got the holy name, the chanting of Ram's name. And from the chanting of the Ram's name, he got the mercy of Ram. And from the mercy of Ram, he got the mercy of Sita. And from the mercy of Sita, he got this nice service of glorifying Ram by composing Valmiki Ramayana, and then was given the intelligence how to further it by the two sons of Sita and Ram. And he trained them, and he understood his position. Although he was so exalted, he was a guru with many followers, as we heard Sridhar Swami saying, super excellent in his knowledge and his quality of devotion. But his quality of devotion told him, I'm just an instrument. I'm an object of mercy. And if there's anything that's glorious, it's the persons who have bestowed that mercy. That's what's glorious. Those persons who bestowed the mercy. And similarly for all of us. Don't answer the question, where would we be if we didn't come in contact with Srila Prabhupada and his teachings? Don't think too much about it. Any one of us. And our lives became changed. Each of us from different. But just, we're the recipients of mercy, that's all. And why? Just causeless mercy. We happened to be in the right place in the right time. Instead of saying no, we said yes. Maybe, a little at a time, but we said yes. And we just keep saying yes. Now there's austerity involved in learning anything. In material education, how many years of austerity do people undergo to get whatever lovely degree they get so they can get a nice job and become a Sudra? And be unemployed if you don't get the job. There's austerity in any kind of education. What to speak of spiritual education? And the austerity may look to a materialist as something horrible. Regular principles, forget it. Rising early. Celibacy. Oh my God. Okay, vegetarian, but the rest of it I'm not so sure about. Anyway, and how does it become possible? By mercy. And being undergoing some austerity so you can maintain that receiving mode of mercy and never go beyond the point of being very humble. To continue receiving, just see yourself as a recipient of mercy. That's all. And Ram played that role when we mentioned, when they were little boys. Ram and Lakshman and the other brothers, wherever they would go someplace, and they would just sit at the feet of the sadhus and hear. And then assimilate it and live by it, and that's how they grew. They became filled, in Leela, with all good qualities because of that eagerness to hear and the eagerness to bring what they hear inside their hearts and keep it that way. Become qualified to receive further mercy and become better instruments. So many nice lessons in practical lessons of life for devotees. So I'll just go back to something that I said the first morning. When hearing all of these things, there's details and the details are interesting, but the essence is what's really important, and there's so many practical lessons, and you can just keep going and going and going and going, and you won't find an end, because the Supreme Lord is limitless, and His glories are limitless. We take guidance, we must take guidance. Say it again. We must take guidance from qualified persons. How do we apply these things in our lives practically? Because we're not qualified like these personalities. But in principle, we should understand the principle and how to apply the principle, and therefore we have primarily, fundamentally, our founder Acharya. And therefore, how important it is to read Prabhupada's books. Not just read Prabhupada's books. Take those books and bring them inside, and then live from the inside out in your life. Therefore, within Srimad Bhagavatam, we have this nice section of Ram's pastimes and his teachings and so forth. And that's guidepost for us. And he speaks very appreciatively and lovingly about Valmiki Ramayana, so we're hearing because our founder Acharya told us to. And we mentioned because Prabhupada gave some reference to Adhyatma Ramayana, we're making certain, at least, references to Adhyatma. So on the basis of disciplic succession, we're trying to fill our hearts with that which is going to bring us to the point of deeper attachment for the name. The songs that were sung had to do with the name and the importance of the name, because that's how Valmiki here became qualified, by simply one thing, the name. Then further instructions from Narada, his spiritual master, and further benedictions from Lord Brahma, and then some opportunity for service. But very practical. This is history. So the Puranas and Itihasas are filled with who did it to whom. The names of this one and that one, you can just get lost in, the names of this one and that one. And ordinary people are attracted to this one, that one, and devotees are interested to what's the message behind. What's the lesson that Valmiki wants us, and Lord Ramachandra wants us to receive in our hearts, in our lives, and become lifted, to become attracted to him, his loving dealings, and how to conduct our lives according to the codes of Dharma. How to be inspired to be proper followers of a proper person. And what are the standards, just like these summations that are being presented in the third section of Balakanda. Okay. It's time for lunch. So, you ready? He's going to tell us about lunch.
Hare Krishna. From here, we will go to the ISKCON temple, which is just 10 kilometers away, and have lunch.